good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me at 4:30 on the second day of this conference. You'll be glad to hear this is a nice, gentle, non-technical talk, so hopefully I won't melt anyone's brains. I went for something a bit dramatic for the title of this talk, the Junior Developer Crisis, because I'm trying to draw attention to something that's pretty easy to forget about, that's something that's easy for us to overlook. So I'm Rory McElearney, I'm the CEO and founder of techcoach.io. And let's be honest, starting your career in 2023, at this moment, it's not easy right now. There are fewer job openings than ever for junior engineers. Even the ones who do manage to secure those jobs, through my network, I'm speaking all the time with junior engineers, and I've noticed there's actually a very high tendency for them to lose those jobs, even if they've gotten them just after 3 months, after 6 months in the post. So especially that's true with startups. The skills required to do those jobs, they're increasing all the time. I remember my first job as a junior front-ender, I just needed to know a little bit of Angular 1. Nowadays, people want you to know Docker, front-end, back-end, all kinds of stuff. And, of course, high uncertainty in the market. So that's the economic outlook, AI, and all things related to that. So in short, it's tough out there. But let's go back. Why are we even talking about this? Why am I interested in these things? So this room is very important to me. This is the main headquarters of Founders and Coders, which is the coding bootcamp that I attended in 2016. So this is a true story. I was walking past this place on my way to work. I used to live on this street. I had no idea what it was, but I saw there was people inside there, and I kind of stuck my head through the window. I thought, oh, wow, what are they doing? Something to do with computers. Looks cool. I saw a few of them had a beer on the desk. I was like, oh, okay, this looks interesting. I wandered in, and I made some friends that day that I have until now. I was given such an incredible welcome, despite feeling nervous, despite feeling like I knew nothing. And it's always stayed with me, that experience, that fact that there was a free place that I could just walk in off the street, that I needed no prior knowledge, and the way I was treated has really shaped a lot of what I've done in the rest of my career. So I've already said that I'm the founder and CEO of a technical coaching startup. But what I've done is I've tried to recreate that founders and coders spirit in a lot of my career and a lot of my professional life. So the other way you might know me, if you follow me on LinkedIn, is I'm one of the co-founders of this organization, Valencia Codes, which is the largest English language developer community in Valencia, Spain, which is where I live, by the way. Of course. We do a number of things. We do, every Monday evening, we meet to do one-on-one coding sessions in person. The first Wednesday of every month, we have technical talks. We do hackathons. We do social events. But really, what I'm trying to recreate is that magical moment of coming into a space where I was so nervous coming in. I was surrounded by people who I didn't know how they were going to treat me, if they were going to take me the right way, and having it completely changed my career and my life. Okay, so let's go a little bit back from this crisis moment to the boom times. So this talk is going to be really based a lot on my personal experience and my background. So we're going to be talking a lot about boot camps here, but obviously a lot of this is true for people who've come into the industry in many other ways, and we're just going to use that to illustrate a point. So there has been, and there continues to be, an ongoing chronic shortage of good software engineers. The result of that was, around 2013, the start of these things called coding bootcamps. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with what these are, but these are 8 to 12-week intensive courses where you pay some money, you learn the minimum amount of coding that's useful for an employer, you get your first job, you get onto the ladder, and then you continue your career from there. So as you can see already in 2015 to 2018, there had been a massive increase in the number of employees who had come from coding bootcamps. But already we can see that, according to Stack Overflow's 2018 survey, only 33.8% of attendees came into bootcamp without developer jobs and were able to get a developer job within 3 months of graduating. So even at 2018, we were seeing that kind of market saturation. We were seeing that maybe all the promises that were being made at that time about how much a bootcamp could actually prepare you, maybe not all of them were true. But what's really, really changed since those boom times? So I spend a lot of time thinking about this through my work with Valencia Codes. I'm constantly in contact with junior developers. I'm constantly in contact with employers. The things that they say to me when I talk to them generally are around this. So remote work. It's really, really difficult to maintain mentorship bonds with someone when you're not in the same room as them. There used to be, or there's this little kind of convenient lie in the engineering industry where you hire senior developers and you hire junior developers, and in the past there used to be this building. They would all go into the building together, the seniors and the juniors together, and they would talk to each other and they would teach each other. You take that online, you take that fully remote, a lot of those bonds are broken, and it's really difficult to replace them. Developers are, well, we're a little bit less loyal than maybe we have been in the past, or how other industries are expected to behave. It's now normal for developers to change jobs every 2 years, every year. This is, I mean, I guess that we've talked about loyalty there. I guess you could say that's people trying to just move up the salary scale, but also there's been because of that, remember, ongoing lack of engineers. We've seen this concept of recruitment, tech recruitment in particular, has become very aggressive. So it's very normal to do a year or two in your job and then be receiving LinkedIn messages, emails all the time from recruiters. And that's just a temptation that's really difficult to avoid. And because of that, there's a real reticence for employers to want to invest 2 years in you, a junior engineer, to get you to the point where you're actually useful, and then suddenly you leave. Employers are increasingly looking at people who can get the job done. That's really what they're interested in. If you look at a lot of the job descriptions, it's really task-based, like how are you going to come in with the right skills that's going to solve my problem today? Another thing that's changed is, so like I said, I started 2016 front-end engineer. There was loads of tasks for me to do. I could go in and make some updates on the website. I could add a little bit of value by updating things. The minimum requirement now to actually be useful to an organization is way higher than it was 7 or 8 years ago. So much of the work that I did, like updating things on the website, is incredibly easy to do with no-code tools. If your website is built with Webflow, for example, if you're building all these little automations with Integromat, with Zapier, that role that you used to have for the intern, for the junior engineer to come in and make those little tweaks and to be minimally valuable has kind of disappeared. And the other big thing that's happened is university capacity has caught up massively. So this graph here shows the bachelor's and master's in computer sciences. This is from the United States, by the way. But as you can see, the amount of throughput of software engineers is now getting up to over 100K per year in undergraduates in the United States. So, and that's mirrored as well in the stats in Europe. So those are the big changes that have happened. And the elephant in the room, we haven't mentioned it yet, but this little thing came out called ChatGPT last year, and everyone's head exploded. Okay, so large language models are just a technology like any other. So let's discuss concretely how they might be used and if they're actually useful. So the 3 big use cases for coders are generating code, Copilot kind of things, explaining, and then teaching. I'll go into these now. So I think there's massive potential for code generation, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be right now. This current generation, I don't know, has anyone here actually tried to use ChatGPT to build anything? As in, a couple of hands have gone up there. Oh, there's quite a few hands have gone up. So a typical thing that happens is you start building and you're putting in your commands into ChatGPT, and then because of the token limit, it loses context of what's going on in other parts of the project. You're trying to do a back end and a front end. The code, they're not really talking to each other. It doesn't know anything about DevOps. It doesn't know anything about debugging, really. So you get kind of stuck. Where I think this will end up with is once that Copilot, once that generative machine has total context of all of your code base, it's able to follow all of your variable naming rules, it has total context of all the database connections, it will become incredibly powerful. But for right now, it's just good for hacking, in my opinion. Explaining code, I think, is incredibly powerful because how many times have you come onto a code base and you read a function and it's 100 lines long, it's 200 lines long, and you're like, oh God, okay. What is the cyclomatic complexity on this? Oof. ChatGPT is incredible at summarizing what does that function do. This makes it a lot easier to onboard juniors, to onboard people onto your team, and to have them quickly get up to date on how does the code base work, and to debug some of those functions. And then the final one, teaching. As you know, I do my study group every Monday evening with VALENCIA codes, and I've been running a few little experiments. I've been trying to see, is it possible to teach someone to code from absolutely zero, they know nothing, with ChatGPT, and they can make things? The answer is no. No, that didn't work. A typical thing that would happen is they would start to get something running, that they would ask ChatGPT to output some file, and then they'd say, great, where do I put the file? Okay, so you've got to get a text editor, and you've got to do this, and then you have to run a server, and they're like, okay. And then they'd say, okay, so I've made this. And I'm like, whoa, 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 we can't put secrets in the front end. What are we doing here? Okay. So from my personal experiments, getting someone to actually code stuff from zero with ChatGPT doesn't really work like that. It is incredible, though, for being a co-pilot, for being someone you can consult, for someone that's kind of like, a pair programming partner. And I think that's going to have massive consequences for junior developers. I think it's really going to be the way that people learn how to code in the future. And the other little experiment that I did was, last week I did a generative AI hackathon. We had about 100 people show up. I set them a series of challenges. One of the challenges was aimed at non-developers, and it was, you have to create a working product with ChatGPT and Replit. I was inspired by this guy over here, Charlie Ward, who is a self-proclaimed non-developer, who maybe a month ago managed to create a working Chrome extension in 45 minutes just by consulting ChatGPT, just by plugging in the things that it told him to do. So I was inspired by that to create the hackathon, and I said, okay, guys, if this guy can do it, someone else can do it. And people did make little hacky things. My friend down here, Guillermo, he's a non-developer as well. He walked away from that being absolutely amazed. He was able to create a few little web pages. Like I said, once you get to scale, the tools just aren't there yet because things just fall apart, they break. So LLMs might not be there right now, but don't write them off for the future. Let's focus back in on the job market. So what is the current situation? We have high level of uncertainty. LLMs are changing the game somehow. No one really knows what the future is on that. This is affecting everyone. I'm sure everyone in this room has been puzzling and trying to figure out where is the ball going to stop on this phenomenon. But really, if you think about it, if you're a hiring manager and you have to build a budget for this next year, to figure out how many junior developers am I going to bring on, it's very uncertain what they will be doing in 2 years, isn't it? Like, it's a really tough challenge for you to think, like, okay, so are they still going to be coding? Are they going to be orchestrating armies of bots? I don't know. venture capital has dropped to a much, much lower rate than it was this time last year even. If you look at the VC numbers, a lot of investment has actually been into AI startups and large language model startups. So those are even false figures, the kind of positive ones that you might see. And of course, this is affected all the way down to startups who have no clear path to raising their next round of funding. We're going to see a lot of deaths in the startup community in this next year and a bit, unfortunately. So the next thing we're seeing is layoffs in big tech. This pushes wages down across the board. Maybe you think it's only affecting those, $500,000 a year product managers who worked at Meta, who did those day in the life videos and TikTok. That's not me. I'm a good developer. I do my job. I'm not affected. What it does is it pushes everything down, basically. So the person who previously was a mid-level is now going for that junior job, that more junior job. That's putting immense pressure on the juniors. Highly expert developers are still very much in demand, as we all know. But like I said, the juniors are really struggling right now. So what does this mean? Does this mean bootcamps are done? Are they finished? Is that it? As I said, there has been, and there does remain, a chronic shortage of good developers. Like, how many companies are here hiring right now today? There's loads. There's loads of demand. Any developer with like a decent amount of experience, a good track record, can get a job pretty quickly. The question is, can 8 to 12 weeks of Ruby on Rails or learning React, is that good enough anymore to get you your first job? It's tough to say. It's tough to say. So I think there will always be a role at the margins, for non-university actors. So that is because the pace of technological change has only increased. And it's really tough for universities to build a curriculum that's going to match that. Remember, they have to make all these plans, get the professors on board, line things up, get the students in. 3 years later, they're hitting the market. So if you think about all the stuff that's even happened in the last 2 years, it's really tough for universities to really stay on top of everything that's happening. So what I've seen is there's a big movement towards part-time, often government-funded programs. In the UK, actually one of the few things you could say that's good about the UK government is they've really funded this concept of skills bootcamps and apprenticeships. A lot of money's gone into that, and there's a really big industry right now there. In Spain, I've seen a lot of people doing formación profesional in web development and things like that. These are part-time. You're not promising someone, quit your job, 12 weeks later, you're going to earn loads of money. It's a continuous thing which is going to happen over a period of 6 months, over a year. And I think that's much more realistic, and that's much more in line with how the market's looking right now. Another really, like I said, apprenticeships are this incredible movement. It's there's lots of ways of cutting them up, but I think it could be as simple as saying, instead of offering a developer role, you offer something that's lower salary, lower pressure, but with the promise of we will train you up. The only problem with this shift in mentality is developer communities, and once again, I'm not saying we've become spoiled, but I know we're all in these Slack groups and Discords, and when a company posts a job offer where the money isn't good enough, they do get a little bit of feedback, usually. Developers are really quite sensitive about being underpaid. So I think this whole concept of apprenticeships, where you're going to be paid like really not very much, but you're going to come out of that 1 year later, 2 years later, like a fully formed individual ready to go on and actually get that first big role, that requires a big mentality shift, because it has not been like that. These last couple of years, people would just reject that totally. But I think maybe we need to start considering these things. There's a few variations on a theme with apprenticeships. I've been talking with a few people in larger organizations. So a classic thing that they would do is rather than posting apprenticeship offers, they have direct relationships with the universities, with the computer science programs there. They find out from the professors who the top 10% are in that year, and then they offer them this apprenticeship, this graduate scheme. The other variation I've seen is the government-funded concept. So we talked about the UK government funding for skills bootcamps, but they will also pay companies to take on apprentices. So once again, that's one of the few things you can actually commend them on, and this seems to have had a really big impact. I was having a great conversation with the founder of Founders and Coders, my coding bootcamp. They have pretty much completely switched to a skills bootcamp and apprenticeship model. So that old model of work for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, learn React, get your first job, has basically gone in the bin. That's a little bit because of market forces. I'm not sure that's them intending to do it that way, but the way things have spun out, the government being willing to pay for that apprenticeship has been a key factor. And it's been really successful for them. So I think that's a model. It once again, requires a bit of a mentality shift, but that's a model that we could maybe approach here. This is a new concept. I'm actually not sure what to call it. I would call them like challenge companies, but there's one of them here today, and it's it's a Ninja. Can anyone help me out? Okay. So what they do is they make you do a coding challenge. They review your code, and then you take part in that over a period of weeks and months, doing work-like challenges, so that at the end of it, you have a CV, you have a portfolio of projects that you've completed, and then they pass that on to an employer. There's another company in Barcelona that does this called Nue. I actually highly recommend checking them out. What's pretty interesting about them is they have a community that you join. You join their Slack community, and you get job ready over a period of 18 months by doing similar hackathons, by doing projects which you then get feedback on. They make money by then the recruitment fee. They have these partnerships with companies. They take a part of that recruitment fee, but it's free to join. And both based in Spain. So that's like a new concept. We'll see how that develops, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And then, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the project that I'm working on, which is Tech Coach. So this is using the concept of mentorship. So mentorship is detailed and specific advice about your work. It could take the form of pair programming, code reviews, but also beyond the technical, beyond you learning your design patterns or whatever it might be, there's a bit of career advice in there as well. This is an ongoing relationship that you have with someone who's a senior developer, and they're able to point you in the right direction should you be going more front-end, back-end, whatever it might be. And ideally, this would be done in-house. There are companies that I know that have like really, really good internal mentorship schemes, but often that's not the case. So what we're trying to do with Tech Coach is that's a marketplace of a selection of really good senior engineers who love mentoring that any company can access. So it makes it affordable for even startups or even individuals to get access to that mentorship, which normally would only be through a large organization. Okay. So through my work with VALENCIA codes, I often get asked by people who are just trying to learn for the very, very first time, what should I do, where should I go? And I've tried to compile here some advice that I usually give to people. Maybe this is going to be useful for you. I don't know if you have like cousins or friends who sometimes hit you on the shoulder and say, hey, should I learn to code? What's that like? And this is the kind of advice that I give to people in those situations. Number one, very important, learn to program before joining a coding bootcamp. So, founders and coders, I had to spend about 6 months just learning JavaScript before we even started. That was endless grinding, pretty much every evening of the week and the weekend, getting up to speed on really how that works before even touching anything else. That was incredibly helpful. There is a massive difference between the people who turn up on day one of formación profesional or a coding bootcamp and they know zero versus the person who has actually already spent several months preparing. They can already pretty much code. Because the last thing you want to do is not really know how to code, and then people start throwing hooks at you. And people start throwing these specific framework-dependent things. And I've seen a lot of people come out of coding bootcamps not really knowing how to code. They've learned how to do tutorials. They've learned how to pass each week of the thing, but they haven't really gotten into the fundamentals. So that's the first piece of advice I'd give to anyone. Dedicate the time on learning to program before you even go near that. Next thing, I have a massive preference for in-person, and that's both for learning and for the first job. So Valencia Codes, all of our events are in person. We don't have any online element whatsoever. Founders and Coders, 100% in person. I think that's just absolutely crucial for a coding bootcamp and ideally for your first job as well. I think remote work, jumping into that as your first job is just incredibly difficult. And a lot of the, how could I put it? A lot of that roundabout that I saw of junior developer gets first job, almost immediately gets fired, comes back around on the roundabout. That was a lot of remote work. I mean, this was during the pandemic, so I guess we didn't have so many options there, but next piece of advice I give is massive, massive preference for doing things in person instead of online. It doesn't matter how good the coding bootcamp looks or their website or whatever, in person. The other thing I should say about that is the reason you're doing these things is to make connections. You know, you're not just learning. I'm still friends with the people that were in my cohort in my coding bootcamp. I still use them as professional connections to this day. This third point is something else that came out of that really interesting conversation I had with the leader of Founders and Coders. So, like all of us, they are also freaking out about how to use these AI tools and how things are going to look in the future. The advice that he gave to me, that he's telling to people, is embrace everything you can, right? So use ChatGPT for your own learning, build side projects, immerse yourself in this AI wave and swim with the tide. And to just leave this on what might be quite a positive note, this is one of the few times in history where things are moving so fast and there's such a big demand for these AI skills that actually a keen, smart, hardworking person can come into a company and start making a difference. So that's a little positive note to leave everything on there. This is one of those few times in history where things are moving so fast. If you have the right mentality, you can come in and start making a difference. Okay, guys, thank you very much. That was the Junior Developer Crisis. So we still have a little bit of time left for questions. Great. Would anyone like to go first? Yes, we have one at the top left.
Hi, thanks for the talk there. I'm just wondering, what would you recommend to a non-coder? Like, what kind of coding technologies and languages should a non-coder learn in the bootcamp or something to get a higher probability of getting a job? That's just one of my questions, sorry.
Right, so they starting from zero and they do want to get a job as a programmer, basically. Well, the conventional wisdom has always been choose where there's been a need.
Where is there a need?
So if we look at if we just look at the history, that started off with being lots of Ruby on Rails from like 2014 to 2016, 17. That switched over to React being incredibly popular after that. I still think some combination of React as a front end, and then probably Node.js as a back end, or Python as a back end is a good combo. The thing about these AI tools is it's very difficult to know where the bull is going to stop on this. So investing a lot of time into becoming a prompt engineer is probably not a good idea. But investing a lot of time into learning how to work with those tools, learning how to use ChatGPT to help you solve problems. I think there's actually a really good survey done every year by Stack Overflow. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they show what are the most popular programming languages. So I think that's the most statistically interesting way of approaching this, rather than me having my own ideas.
Sorry, just one more question.
Okay.
There are a lot of bootcamps cropping up nowadays.
There are.
And I think there's probably not much in terms of regulation of how qualified the trainers are. Do you think that would be something that would be coming?
Regulation? Oof.
No, well, just kind of in terms of like, this is a qualified trainer, because lots of trainers do not have a pedagogical knowledge to be able to teach, let's say.
I don't think regulation is coming, because that space is moving so fast, and the technologies move so quickly. It's quite, and often the people that they employ to do the teaching have recently finished the coding bootcamp. So I think, yeah, I agree with you on the variable
Quality.
competency, yeah, of those trainers. But I don't think that's going to come from a government regulation approach. I think that's going to come from a marketplace approach where the best bootcamps will win and the ones which aren't working will shut down.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi, I have a question. Do you believe that the advices that you gave us applies not only to strictly coding and developing jobs, but also jobs more related to software designing, like, I don't know, software architecture or data engineer, which is just about combining commercial off-the-shelf tools?
You're referring to my kind of final principles on that last page? Yeah, I think those are very applicable to all sorts of walks of life. And I wouldn't even draw the line at saying data engineering. I think young people at the start of their careers, I think it's... I've been working remote. I've been running remote teams since 2018. I love remote work. I do it myself. I'm a big believer. I just don't think... it's a good way to start your career, because there's so much that you miss out on from having that kind of campus set up. And it's difficult to find those companies now, actually. But I think there is a movement now back towards people coming back into the office. So I think that's kind of swung around from a peak remote, maybe like 2 years ago, obviously because of circumstances, to people wanting to get back together.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask you, especially now that learning coding has gotten so much easier, and it's not something that you need universities. In fact, they are lagged behind normally. How necessary is a university degree as opposed to having actual experience and projects, portfolio, and all of that stuff when you're trying to get your career started? Thank you.
I agree with you. It's probably not necessary to have that academic background, but wow, it really helps. I mean, I know because I missed out on it. I did chemical engineering, and then I switched over, and yeah, it was brutal the first couple of years, trying to learn all those data structures and having to learn all those algorithms, and you can kind of get through a lot of your career without knowing that stuff. So it's not essential. I think you were saying, like, is it necessary? I don't think it's necessary, but wow, it's work that must be done, and either you do it when you're younger and your brain is agile, or you do it like me a little bit later. Anyone else? No, I think that's it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again for your time.